This video is all about objects that aren't the size they should be. A pencil, for example, usually fits comfortably in your hand. A guitar should be something you can sling over your shoulder and play. Sometimes, though, artists and engineers play with the conventions and make things much larger or smaller than you might expect them to be. Why? Because it's fun. Check out these oversized and undersized delights from all over the world. The ancient samurai in Japan took their weapons seriously. Some of their swords were designed for battle, and some of them were designed for ceremonial use. The Noritsu Odachi definitely fits into the latter category. It's a deadly weapon, but as it's 15 feet long, you'd have to be a giant to swing it. The sword was made more than 500 years ago and has been the cause of great curiosity. To the samurai, swords were as much works of art as weapons of war. They believed their blades were sacred objects, and so the larger a sword was, the more importance would be attached to it. We don't know who the owner of the Noritsu Odachi was, but it's likely that he would have been seen as a mighty warrior and someone with enormous power and resources. You wouldn't want to have messed with that person, and probably not just because they had a 15-foot-long sword to strike you down with. Rock stars treat their guitars with just as much importance as the Japanese samurai treated their weapons. We've seen guitars with 2 or 3 necks, or 12 strings, but this leviathan of a guitar stands alone at the top of the rock and roll world. It was made by iconic guitar manufacturer Gibson, and it's 43 feet long and 16 feet wide. It's also far too heavy for anybody to pick up. It weighs in at over 2,250 pounds. Despite its gigantic proportions, it's still playable and can make the same sounds any guitar can. You just have to team up with a few friends if you wanted to play a song with it. The huge guitar is modeled after the famous Gibson Flying V and was purpose-built for a traveling exhibition called Guitar, the instrument that rocked the world, back in 2014. It took a full year for a team at the New Jersey Liberty Science Center in the USA to build it, and it's still on tour around the world to this day, just like any good rock star should be. There are plenty of sights for tourists to see in the beautiful city of Stockholm, Sweden, but most visitors to the city are completely unaware that it contains the largest medieval manuscript in the world, and it's a book with a dark topic and history. The Cex Gigas, which translates as giant book, is 3 feet high and contains 620 pages. Worryingly, the subject matter of the book is the devil. It was created during the 13th century, allegedly by a Benedictine monk who had broken all of his vows. The texts include both the Old and New Testament among several more religious texts, but is decorated with numerous pictures of Satan. The reasons for the illustrations are unknown, but as it's handwritten, experts have been able to verify that it's all the work of one person. It would therefore likely have taken somewhere in the region of 10 years to complete. It's on display in the King's Library, but it's kept behind a glass screen and closed at all times. When the famous writer and humanitarian Shri Chinmoy was turning 76 years old in 2007, his well-wishers knew exactly what to get him. As a token of their respect and appreciation, they made him the largest pencil ever created, 76 feet long to match his 76 years. It wowed the crowds when it was unveiled in Queens, New York. If you were somehow able to get the pencil upright and find some paper that could cope with the weight, you would be able to write with it. The graphite core inside it is 10 inches thick and weighs 4,500 pounds. The point had to be sharpened with an electric saw, and even the eraser at the end is more than 2 feet long. Once all the difficult work was done, 50 gallons of paint was used to coat the sides and dedicate it to Chinmoy. If you broke all the materials down and made regular-sized pencils out of them, you'd have more than 2 million pencils. Medicine Hat in Alberta, Canada would be a notable place even if only for its unusual name. It has a whole other claim to fame than that though. It's the home of the world's largest chess set. The board and all its massive wooden pieces can be found outdoors, right in the middle of Medicine Hat's downtown area and across the road from the public library. The public is welcome to play with it, if they're capable of lifting the pieces. The local chess club built the board and the set to celebrate their hobby, and worked with engineer Dr. Bill Taylor to turn their vision into reality. Each side of the colossal board is 20 feet long, and the king pieces stand a regal 4 feet off the ground. That makes them larger than the average child. Children in particular are encouraged to come and play with the chess set to help them learn about the hobby, but they usually need the assistance of adults to help them make their moves. As the 1940 World Fair in New York approached, typewriter manufacturer Underwood had a new model of typewriter to promote. They thought long and hard about how to get the maximum level of publicity for their product, and then hit upon the perfect idea. They made one which was exactly 1,728 times larger than their standard model. The idea was a success. People flocked to the enormous Underwood Master Typewriter and posed happily for pictures of the kind that we can see here. In truth, Underwood had been planning this stunt for a while. The World Fair was just the ideal event to show it off at. It took them 3 years to build their 14-ton typewriter, upon which every key weighed 45 pounds. Amazingly, the typewriter was more than just a massive marketing tool. It worked properly and was even used to type a message welcoming people to the fair. We have no idea where the organizers managed to find paper large enough to fit in it. The biggest fork in the world is in Springfield, Missouri, USA, and nothing about it makes sense. It's currently in front of the offices of Noble & Associates, who are an advertising agency. Their business model has nothing to do with eating, so how did an 11-ton, 35-foot-tall fork end up outside their premises? The answer is that it used to be outside a Mexican restaurant elsewhere in the town, but the restaurant went bust. The advertising company decided it would be a shame to let the sculpture go to waste, and so they bought it and moved it. Perhaps the restaurant would have been better served concentrating on its menu rather than spending money getting eccentric works of art made. Regardless of the story behind it, the fork is a popular stop-off point for drivers, who like to park up and snap a quick picture with it when they see it. We imagine the advertising agency doesn't mind the free publicity either. These days, camera technology keeps on getting smaller. A mid-range smartphone comes with a camera that's considerably more powerful than what would have been considered a leading digital camera in the mid-1990s. In years past, the opposite was true. If you wanted to take a big picture, you needed a big camera. That's why a camera larger than the average family car was built in 1900, and it was built by a train company. The Chicago and Alton Railway Company built a new train named the Alton Limited in 1899. They were convinced it was the most beautiful train in the world, but they needed pictures of it to convince everybody else. No camera large enough to photograph it all in a single shot existed, and so this vast box with an enormous lens was made for the occasion. It weighed 1,400 pounds, and even the glass plate was 8 feet by 5 feet. It was worth it though. The resultant picture won the grand prize for World Photographic Excellence the following year in Paris. You've seen the world's largest pencil, and now here's the world's largest paintbrush, made by Sujit Das of Assam, India. The brush is 28 feet long and entirely built out of wood and bamboo. Unlike other oversized objects, which were made more for effect than practical value, Sujit has actually used his giant brush to create works of art. He owns an art school in his hometown, and on the walls are portraits of Mahatma Gandhi and Bhagat Singh, created using the big brush. Because of the lightweight materials it's made from, the brush weighs less than 50 pounds despite its length. Guinness confirmed it to be a world record holder back in 2015. The bristles you'll find at the end of the brush are all hairs from a horse's tail, and Sujit hangs the whole thing from the ceiling in order to paint with it. He eventually hopes to be able to open an art gallery large enough for him to display it as an exhibit, but he has a few more portraits to paint with it first. We've always found the Rubiks Cube a difficult thing to solve, And so we have no idea why someone would want to make it even harder to do so. Someone's done exactly that though, by making a Rubik's Cube so tiny that the only way it can be solved is by using tweezers. The minuscule cube is less than 1/4 inch tall on each side. And so the use of a magnifying glass is also recommended for anybody who wants to try to solve it themselves. The cube was made by an eccentric Englishman called Tony Fisher, who's also the only person who solved it so far. Making strangely proportioned cubes is nothing new for Tony. He also attracted press attention in his home country a few years earlier when he made a 5-foot-tall Rubik's Cube. That was also a world record breaker. At least there's no risk of him losing the larger one. The tiny version is smaller than a fingernail and extremely delicate. Earlier on, we saw the largest guitar anywhere in the world. Now we're going to the other end of the scale for a different musical instrument. This is the world's smallest violin, and it was made by miniaturist David Edwards of Edinburgh, Scotland, at only 1.5 inches tall. It looks like the sort of thing that you might find inside a child's dollhouse. It isn't a toy though. If you're very careful with the even smaller bow which goes with the violin, it's possible to play the instrument just like you would a full-sized one. Edwards, who considers himself to be the best in the world at making miniature items, says that while other people have made scale violins close to this size, few of them are playable, and none of them have the same level of detail as this one, which is modeled on the classical Stradivarius violin. David used to play cello with the Scottish National Orchestra, and so he's combined his musical talent with his design ability to make this stunning product. The eye of a needle is often referenced as a comparison for something which is incredibly small, so it seems unthinkable that anybody would be able to build a sculpture inside such a tight space. You already know what we're about to tell you though. Someone has. Willard Wigan from Birmingham in England has been making needle eye sculptures for years. One of his most famous creations is a tiny sculpture of William Shakespeare, which was made to mark the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's death in 2016. In an excellent play on words related to the scale of the piece, he named it To See or Not to See. Seeing Wigan's work isn't easy because every sculpture is smaller than a full stop on a laptop keyboard. Viewings are only possible with the aid of a microscope. The statue is one of over 30 he's so far created, including a tribute to Noddy Holder from Slade, one of the biggest bands ever to come from his hometown.
Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching and see you soon!